Joining us here on Game Night is NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson at Scoop B on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, you can check out all of his work over at Bally Sports. My friend, how you doing today?
Staying dry. How are you, sir?
I am currently staying dry. As long as the storm passes before I leave tonight to go to the gym, I will be fine. So
I like the sound of it. Great minds think alike, brother.
So obviously, I want to start with what happened last night because I opened the show by saying that people spend so much time like who's smart, who's now comes to basketball. But you could argue this Suns team, they're very fortunate to have who and what they have. Devin Booker never started a game in college. Okay, Mikal
Right.
Bridges should have been a Sixer, but the Sixers front office cabal traded him to the Suns. Nobody thought Chris Paul was going to end up in Phoenix until he actually did end up in Phoenix. And you could argue that Phoenix lucked out when the ping pong balls rolled their way, so they got DeAndre Ayton. So you could argue that the Suns, is it luck? Is it fortune? Is it fate? Whatever it is, the Suns are an amazing story.
They are, and you mentioned Michael Bridges and the Sixers almost getting them. This is the Philly market. You got to say Villanova's own Mikal Bridges.
That's right.
Of the Western Conference champion Phoenix Suns was shipped from the 76ers to Phoenix, and oh, how sweet it is. He's part of the fold, and as I've been saying on a myriad of different shows, Michael Bridges is part of a perfectly made cake with the ingredients that included Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul is simply the icing on top. This is a great story, and you don't leave out their head coach, who has been Monty Williams, who's, I think he spent some time in Philadelphia as well as a Sixer at some point briefly. But I think that they're just in a good situation. But even before Chris Paul arrived, I mean, that 41 points, again, is the icing last night. But they were a good team. He just took them another octave, and here we are now.
And they really needed that extra octave because I feel like every young team needs that veteran who can steer, who can show them, I've been there, I've done that. And if I remember correctly, Chris Paul single-handedly outscored the Clippers last night at one point. So it was like, he was just like, listen, I am not doing this again. I'm putting my foot on the gas pedal. I'm hitting the NOS button. I'm going the final quarter mile 110%. And I'm just so happy to see Chris Paul in the finals. I love this Suns team, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the next level.
Yeah, I am too. I think that it'll be interesting to see. If I had my druthers, I would like to see Phoenix Suns Atlanta Hawks matchup, just because I think this Hawks team is so new, but the Suns team in a lot of respects is so new also. This is not a Warriors finals. This isn't a LeBron James, Lakers, Miami Heat, Cleveland Cavaliers finals. This isn't this to me, this is like 94, 95. This is Knicks, Rockets, Knicks, or rather Rockets, Orlando Magic. It's a different team. And the last time the Bucks made it to the finals, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was Lou Alcindor. And I believe that the last time the Hawks won a finals, it was in 52 when it was the St. Louis Hawks. And the Suns haven't been to the finals since 93. And Michael Jordan and the Bulls shellacked Charles Barkley 4-2 in that series. And it's great for my network at Bally. All 4 teams, or now 3 teams currently playing, our old Bally Sports Network teams. And, it's good for everybody all the way around.
I hear you. Well, let's get into those Bucks and Hawks games tonight. Coverage begins here on ESPN Radio on 97.3 ESPN at 8 p.m. tonight, of course, for those of you listening on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. By the way, at Scoop B on Twitter and Instagram for all of your NBA coverage. Joining us here on Game Night. No Giannis tonight. Now, the good news is no ligament tears. He's going to be okay overall. But at least for tonight, if you had to put your finger and say, if this guy steps up, the Bucks can win, who is that guy tonight?
Chris Middleton. It's going to be a combination of Chris Middleton. They still have 2 guys left in their big three, and it'll be Chris Middleton. As I penned a piece at Bally the other day where I discussed, essentially that Chris Middleton played like Michael Jordan the other night. Of course, When he took over, I think he scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. I think you're going to actually see a Chris Middleton that played like himself in round one of the playoffs last year against the Miami Heat, where they took a game or two. And you're going to need that and more against an Atlanta team, because here's the thing. Atlanta has proven that they can win without Trae Young. They did it in game 4, and they were up 10 points before Giannis got hurt. Now you're in a situation where it's heightened, and they're in a situation where Milwaukee has to put up or shut up. And you're sad to see Giannis' situation, but I think that the storyline for the playoffs this year has simply been battle of the fittest, and that's what it is at this point.
Let me dig a little deeper with you with the Bucks here for a moment. Someone made a comment the other day, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head who exactly said it. But they made the comment that max contracts are no longer for max players. And that, obviously we know how talented Middleton is. But if he doesn't step up tonight, there's going to be a little bit of that, little designation above his head, right? If Drew Holiday didn't step up tonight, people are going to wonder, was he just only good in New Orleans? They could use him tonight. Is there something to be said with the fact that we are in a world now where the contract of the player does not always reflect the talent of the player anymore?
I don't think that's new. I think many sports fans looked at Juwan Howard in that regard at points when he was playing for the Washington Bullets, and people, I think it was like 100, 120 million, and people were upset there. I think when you look at the Knicks faithful, they were upset that Allen Houston hurt his knee, and then he never really came back the same that he was when he signed that deal. He got that deal with the Knicks after leaving Detroit. And I just think over time, I think people are looking for Kevin Garnett results where, players are loyal forever and death to do us part. And he ended up partying and going to Boston and winning a championship. So to send her right back to what you're asking me, yeah, I think there's a criticism, but I also think that nobody expected Milwaukee to beat the Brooklyn Nets in round 2. So the fact that they've gotten this far on fumes is a miracle. They were calling for Mike Budenholzer's job simply because it seemed to be business as usual. But this is what I take from just the whole dichotomy of Milwaukee as a whole this year. When you look at the Bucks this season, they played in an Eastern Conference where Philadelphia and Brooklyn was expected to represent the East. And I think that people's expectations for the Bucks dwindled simply because they lost faith in Giannis in the playoffs last year. He was hurt, and then there was questions about just his durability, and even myself making comparisons to LeBron's first stint in Cleveland, where he couldn't get it done, and he kind of in real time you saw his flaws against a Miami team that was just simply hungry. So I think those expectations for the Bucks weren't as high, and so many people paid attention to Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris on the Philly side, and on this side of the Hudson, the Nets with the big three of Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. So I think that the Bucks are kind of in a situation where anything extra is golden, and so I think they exceeded those expectations, but so did the Hawks. This is a team, Josh, that fired their coach, hired Nate McMillan, and Nate McMillan made Trae Young play defense. You brought in Lou Williams at the trading deadline. Lemon Pepper Lou was the unsung hero in Game 4, and I don't know what it is. He's a native of Gwinnett County, Georgia, and it's something in the water there, or something in the recipe for lemon pepper wings. But he's doing his thing, man. You gotta credit him. Both teams played hard, as Rasheed Wallace would say.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a report actually that Lloyd Pierce is going to be joining Rick Carlisle's staff over in Indiana. That's an interesting pairing right there, to say the least. But anyway, I'll move on from that fiasco. I'm sorry. I think the whole situation in Indiana is a joke, honestly. But that's just a side conversation.
No, it's even their interview process last year was interesting. Just for what I was told. What'd you say?
That's a nice way of putting it. Interesting.
Well, Kevin Pritchard is in a situation where, from everything I've been told, where the owner is very involved in that hiring process. And they hired Bjornsson last year, and they had some other viable candidates, but ultimately a lot of people who interviewed for that position, I'm told, withdrew their name just because they felt uncomfortable. And that's a far cry from. Think about it, right? Nick McMillan was the head coach of the Indiana Pacers last year.
Yep.
They let him go. He became an assistant coach on Lloyd Pierce's staff. The Hawks fired Lloyd Pierce, and then Lloyd Pierce becomes an assistant coach for the team that his replacement coached for last year. That's crazy.
It is crazy. I just only in the NBA, right? Only in.
Only
you couldn't write this into like some show on the CW, for goodness sake. It wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Only CW.
Let's get back to the Hawks here. I want to ask you: Is could potentially the secret weapon for the Hawks be the man who played very well the other night, Cam Reddish?
Could be. I think it's a combination of Cam, Killer Cam. It's a combination of John Collins, who, Chris Paul talked about DeAndre Ayton getting a bag this summer. John Collins is going to get a bag this summer. He saved or kind of sealed the deal in Game 1 for Atlanta in that win, and I think. I also think it's going to be a collaborative effort. Listen, in my opinion, the Hawks are not that much better than Milwaukee, but they're better coached. Mm. And I think that's what happened in the series against the 76ers. The Hawks were not better than the Sixers. They were better coached. Mm. And that's all I have to say about that. I think it's a collaborative effort. I think Clint Capella thinking he's Larry Bird, John Collins sealing the deal there, Cam Reddish stepping it up, and also Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari, who needs to answer my calls, by the way. But ultimately, I think that when it comes down to it, it's a collaborative effort. They're better coached, and let the best team win. I'd like to see the Hawks take it to the next level.
NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Scoop B on Instagram and Twitter for all your NBA coverage and analysis. Check out his work over at Bally's Sports. Well, you opened the door there for me, so I got to ask this question. There's a lot of people out there who are blaming, though, Doc Rivers for the Sixers' loss in the last series. And you just said that the Hawks, they outcoached Sixers. So is that Doc Rivers' fault? Is that his triumvirate of all these big-name coaches' fault? How do you delineate the responsibility of Doc Rivers and his staff then?
It's not just experts saying it. Players are saying it too. Players on that team are saying it.
So is Doc an overrated coach? Is Doc did he have a bad day at the office?
I won't bash Doc, but I will say that I have heard it said that there are some players who asked what's the difference between Doc and Brett Brown. Like, players on that current team, like there's a level of frustration. And I think that it comes down to, if Joel is your guy, how do you balance that attack? I've heard it where, there's guys who have said, well, he just stands on the perimeter and people just stand around and just watch him freelance for hire. And that's it. Like, there's a level of frustration. It's almost like he's a big man version of Allen Iverson, standing around, jab stepping, crossing over, getting to the cup, while all the other four guys on the team stand around and, are figuring out what their role is in the playoffs. And I feel like they ran out of gas because Seth Curry couldn't stick Trae Young. And ultimately, Tobias Harris had an off game. Ben Simmons had an off game. And, there are people who have marveled at Embiid's healing properties in his body in order to do well, but he can't do it by himself. So I just think that as it relates to Doc can't dribble the basketball. I'm trying to cover all grounds. I don't think it's a level the players not responding to Doc. I just think that Atlanta was better coached and caught a lot of folks by surprise by how good they were. I kind of feel like we just had this notion that we were just going to lay on the operating table and it was going to be Brooklyn, Philadelphia in the conference finals with no work put in. And they got comfortable. I don't think Brooklyn got comfortable. I think Philly got comfortable. And it started from that game 1 against Atlanta. Inexcusable. And to come back and to fall short, I also think it comes down to Danny Green's injury. Like, I think had he been healthy, it would have been more of a series. I like Danny's game. I like his veteran leadership. I think for Philadelphia, he's Philly's version of what Lou Williams is for Atlanta, not as far as style of play, just as far as voice of reason and as far as just having been there and being able to guide that team in that regard. I think in some respects that veteran leadership role that he has is everything that many people thought Al Horford would have been for Philadelphia, so to speak. But I want to see Philly run it back. Like, as much as I may, criticize or, share my knowledge of what I've heard, ultimately I'd like to see them run it back, just like I'd like to see Brooklyn run it back. But, you have to you got to let those things take its course and, see what Elton as well as what the rest of the brain trust is going to do this offseason.
Yeah, and honestly, you have to criticize them because some of those performances in those games with the turnovers and other things were just inexcusable. 2 more for you before I let you go. Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, NBA insider, joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Now, with that all being said, I have to wonder, though, how much is people want to blame Doc, but I got to blame the players, too, because at some point, as a professional athlete, you got to take responsibility for your own actions, right? And I go back to, and this is still stuck in my head, and I'll never let go of this until someone convinces me otherwise. Before Kobe Bryant was taken from this earth, the final detail he ever did on ESPN Plus was on the 76ers. And he spent about 10 of those 14 minutes eviscerating those players. Like, literally just saying they don't have good basketball IQ, they don't understand fundamental basketball, they're jumping off the wrong feet. Like, if anybody hasn't seen the Kobe detail in the Sixers, you have to watch it. I have to ask the question, we can blame the coach all we want, but at some point, don't the players have to take responsibility on them to become better and play better? Because they're the one, as you said, they're the one dribbling the ball and not Doc.
Yes, definitely. They put the points on the board. They are responsible for getting to the next level. I mean, this is twice that the Sixers have had championship dreams in the last 3 years, and they've fallen by the wayside. 2019, Kawhi Leonard in that shot, and then in 2021 against Game 7 against Atlanta, and it's quite possible Philly could have came into a situation playing against a hobbled Milwaukee Bucks and gone to the finals and playing against the Phoenix Suns. So it's unfortunate. You hold them accountable, but I kind of I take it back a little further. Like there are people who blame Philly for drafting Markelle Fultz instead of Jason Tatum. There are folks who, look at that whole Colangelo situation, which, they bought Elton Brand in, and, I will always respect that man. But I also think that, the Jimmy Butler situation, as far as him staying, was disappointing because he and Brett Brown did not get along. They did not see eye to eye. And in a scramble, the Sixers and Elton had to, find a way to patch that up. J.J. Redick left. It came down to, re-signing Tobias Harris to that $142 million deal, and then signing Al Horford in the 25th hour for a Boston Celtics team who did not want to pay him the money that he ended up getting now. And now he's traded back to Boston and he's getting the money he wanted to stay with the team he wanted to be with in the first place. So, I think when it's all said and done, though, the Eastern Conference has gotten that much better. Philly is Philly. Brooklyn is Brooklyn. Now you got Atlanta. Now you got Milwaukee. I'm sure Miami's going to retool this summer. And, it's going to be interesting.
Before I let you go, I can't not talk to you without mentioning the man we haven't talked about much, Ben Simmons. What do you think, in your educated, informed opinion? Not you're reporting anything. This is just, do you think Ben Simmons is going to be a Sixer next year? And if he is going to be a Sixer, is he going to grow into the player that everyone hopes he's going to be?
I think he's going to be a Sixer next year. I think he becomes a Sixer, or I think he remains in Philadelphia if they don't get the deal that they want. I know that the 76ers are putting out that they're retaining Ben Simmons, but I think if the right offer comes along, I think that they do make a move. I don't think that they're going to make a move with Brooklyn for Kyrie Irving. I don't think that it's going to. I think it's going to come down to, number one, seeing what the market is with the Golden State Warriors as it relates to things that I have reported. I think they're going to look at the market in Portland and see if Portland's interest in moving CJ McCollum is doable as well as draft picks. But I think ultimately, if Ben Simmons stays in Philadelphia, I think that they need to add some added pieces to complement him. I think he needs to strictly move off the basketball like LeBron did in his first couple of years in Miami. And I think that he is a scorer that can get to the basket and create any shot. I think that there's a pressure that comes along with in today's NBA of being a jump shooter that in 90s NBA culture wasn't there. I don't think you have to be a jump shooter to win championships as a point guard. But I do think that when people magnify the fact that he went to the basket and passed up on a wide open layup or dunk, and that's video that people play over and over and over again, it's almost like people fetishize about his ability or lack thereof of shooting jumpers and scoring at will. And I think in part that's something psychological that I think he has to figure out. I have a friend who is a clinical psychologist, and he said that he texted me and he said, there are such things as having a psychologist that can walk you through those processes and, right, figure out what it is that, you want to do. I want to give a shout out to my friend, John Granger. So if Ben is listening, he should, reach out to my guy, John Granger, and get some some consulting in that regard. But I think ultimately, I think Ben stays if Philadelphia can't get something of equal value. And I think that the Warriors, as well as the Portland Trailblazers, are prime candidates.
For more NBA insight, analysis, and reporting, Scoop B on Instagram and Twitter is where you go for all your NBA coverage. At Scoop B on Instagram and Twitter. He is Brandon Scoop B Robinson, NBA insider, working with Bally Sports as all guests. He joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN and on 97.3 ESPN mobile app and Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. My friend, I appreciate you jumping on in the conversation.
You know what I'm going to say next, right?
Thank you for letting me be myself.
Thank you for the opportunity, as always, for allowing me to be myself.
I appreciate it, man. Take care of yourself.
My man, I'll talk to you soon.